Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr, and also because we are live here with Kevin Noon. The first Tom, how's it going?
Oh, Tony, it's going great. I know we posted Kevin posted the link to the show on twitter.com, and there was immediately a question. Kevin's not going to be on the show, is he? Well, sorry, friends. There's nothing we can do. He's in the walls at this point. Sorry.
I would click myself off, but I will not give Jordan Kapler any sort of satisfaction.
Aside from that horrendous intro, Kevin, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fighting with Astros Twitter right now. You know, I'm multi-sport, multitasking as we speak, but I think I've gotten people to calm down or move on to something else. But yeah, it's Friday, February 3rd. Fantastic. Here we
I
go.
think when you fight with Astros fans on Twitter, you should have like little masks for your fingertips so that you don't get any on you. But welcome, everybody. This is a Friday show. We decided to do this, 30 minutes ago. And so, again, Tom nor Kevin have prepared anything, which is annoying. So, your questions will run the show. So, please ask away and get in here and ask and ask. And to give you a heads up, we talked with 10 Ohio State assistants, graduate assistant James Laurinaitis, recruiting director Mark Pantoni and head coach Ryan Day on Wednesday. So, and you've already derailed the show, Kevin, by asking why is Tom's voice like lavender. This is a callback to last week's show when we still didn't have that answer.
It's canon now.
Yeah, well, lavender Tom.
I have nothing to add.
Kevin's voice, more of a cornflower.
Yes. I have nothing to add to that. That's fine. Yes, we did get to talk to Ryan Day and the assistant coaches and Mark Pantoni, and yeah.
I did not spend any time with Pantoni. Tom, did you?
I did. I was with him a decent amount, and he's someone who we don't get to talk to very much during the course of the year. Honestly, generally it's this time, and then we'll get him, and sometimes we get Mickey Marotti this time of year, and then you don't see them again. Well, you see them plenty, but you don't get to talk to them in a press conference setting for another 12 months. So I spent a good amount of time with him, and boy, you want to talk about someone whose job has changed a lot in the last couple of years. You get in number one, the transfer portal. That's now his problem. Identifying talent there. That's something that he didn't have to worry about 5 years ago. Transfers were not really nearly as much of a thing 5 years ago as they are now. And then also just the speeding up of the recruiting cycle, where all of a sudden guys, it used to be you'd start making offers 12, 18 months out. There are like 26 kids who have offers right now. That whole process is just sort of sped up as other teams have tried to, jump the line a little bit, and then you have to try and cut back in front of them in line. So that's all sped up. In just the recruiting business in general the recruiting department has just gotten a lot bigger. He said that the analogy that was used with him was with the show Yellowstone, which I have not watched, but I don't know if you guys are familiar, but I'm familiar enough that I understood it. He said he's gone from working the ranch to running the ranch, and he's not necessarily the one who is doing the day-to-day, contacting of recruits or whatever. It is like he's doing a lot of the, overseeing the people who are doing a lot of the sort of day-to-day tape grinding and that kind of stuff. He still watches a lot of tape. I think that's sort of his favorite thing to do. But he has I guess taken over more of a supervisory role there and just running what is an ever-growing department.
Kevin, you were there as well, right? Were you there for?
Yeah, I was there kind of at the beginning of Mark Pantoni. I was running 2 cameras, and I heard a lot of the same things and kind of went through about 20 minutes of his interview yesterday as I was kind of fishing for some quotes. And I heard the Yellowstone comment that Tom had mentioned, and I mean, I think just the biggest thing for me is that with NIL and everything else, you have to really, and I listen to several coaches, so I probably will pull all this out for a story at some point if one of you guys don't get to it first. If you determine a kid is too NIL focused, how do you approach him at that point? And honestly, it sounds like from Mark Pantoni that you can't go down that path too far with him if it's just all about the money right off the bat. If that's the case, you have to make a decision. You have to kind of look at. I think you have to look at the kid. I think you have to look at the position. You have to look at what else is on the board. But it doesn't sound like they're going to go too far down the path with somebody if they're up front and say, really, I care what can you do for me before I prove anything on campus. And I listened to quotes from I think one from like Tony Alford, but I'm not sure who it was. I think it was Tony. It sounds like that there's going to be kind of a consensus when it comes to making those types of decisions. And I think you might see Ohio State move to more of a regionalized recruiting base. They're still going to recruit Florida. They're still going to recruit California and Texas. But I think that it's going to be I think there'll be more emphasis on within Ohio and the Midwest, especially as 24 and 25 are both looking like classes within the state of Ohio that may have some dudes. So, very interesting to see how things are changing. And let's not forget, Mark Pantoni is doing this down several staff members right now. He's seen several of his proteges move on to other programs to run their own departments. So on top of everything else, on top of having to fill the void left by these vacancies, we're hiring. I mean, he's having to find people too. So he's probably not getting to see the family that much.
It's funny, maybe like 8 years ago or so, they start hiring people to do like social media stuff and graphics. And like that was the next big step of recruiting. And now that just looks like the cartoon department, basically, based on everything else that has gone on. It also reminds me, Tom, you're talking about how he now runs the place rather than he works it. Like when I talked to head coaches back in 2019 at Big Ten Media Days about what they missed about being an assistant, it was like getting to coach, like actually getting to coach and do stuff. And it's like what Mark Pantoni got into this business to do. I don't know how much of that he still gets to do. You said the film is still there. And I think maybe that's what that's what grounds him, that sort of thing. And it keeps him happy enough because it's a different world. It's a different job than it used to be. And who knows where it's going. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, because Ryan Day, and there was a lot of stuff that he said in about, nearly an hour of talking. When discussing recruiting and NIL, he said that there's going to be this plan in about a couple of months that he feels pretty good about. And that was in relation to, he said, like current guys and then also the 24 class. So the fact that he's talking about NIL and the 24 class tells me like there's going to be something put forth for incoming guys, perhaps automatically. I don't know if that's going to be like a Longhorn thing with the 50,000 per lineman or something, but it sounds like something like that is in the works. So there is some sort of maybe at the outset or a guarantee or just some kind of information or baseline that they can tell each freshman, because right now it's, well, you've got to get here and work first. And that might automatically just put some guys off. Whereas if they just knew there would be something, then they'd be more willing to listen to Ohio State.
Well, I guess the first thing is, but Tony, according to NCAA rules, NIL cannot be used as a recruiting inducement. So I think this whole conversation is irrelevant. Next topic. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That's happening literally everywhere. Oh, okay, cool. All right. So then, yes, then it becomes, I think that programs like Alabama, Georgia, programs that are sort of developmental programs where, not like you're recruiting 2 stars and developing them into better players like Michigan State under Mark D'Antonio, but developmental in that if you go there, you will have a very good chance of being an NFL player. So programs like that who don't just have to sell the NIL piece, I think they just have to be able to get enough NIL to kind of make it a decision. Because if you make it a decision between Miami and Ohio State, and Miami is offering $500,000 and Ohio State can't offer you anything, well, then there are going to be people who take the Miami offer, even though that means, sinking into the abyss in Miami and going 5-7, because you can't pass that amount of money up. If it's 500, if it's $200,000 versus $50,000 to start, well, then that's probably a different conversation. So having some kind of a baseline like that would certainly be helpful, I would think. And, I think you have seen already some of the programs who have tried to do this as just be the highest bidder, and that's the recruiting strategy. You've seen that already kind of not work in a bunch of places and create internal strife in a couple places. So I don't think that's going to be the answer. So it's just sort of be able to do enough that you're competitive with everyone else. And it feels like there's, once you're a little more systematized there with whichever collective they end up working most closely with, that I think probably does a lot to, alleviate some of the concerns right now.
How much do you think we're going to see graphics after this upcoming NFL draft with potentially 3 first-round picks and what all the money is of everything developed here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, pointing out what these dollar figures are compared to $200,000 to go and play somewhere, 500,000, whatever. We don't necessarily know the numbers. We certainly heard the numbers of quarterback Jaden Rashada. That's still debatable of how those numbers break down. But what can't be broken down is the way that the NFL rookie contracts are. We know what those numbers are slotted at. So we know that if CJ Stroud goes 4th in the draft, you plug that in. If Paris Johnson goes 12th, we plug that in. If JSN goes 15th, plug that in. I think we're going to see a huge onslaught of that. But then again, all right, that's all well and good. What can you do for me now? I'm coming from a pretty dysfunctional home. I would like to make sure that my mom can eat.
Yeah. And Tom, what I was saying earlier, that's not inducement. That's just benefits. It's totally different. It's like, this is not we're not targeting you. The inducement will be here for whomever. Like this will be here for whomever. It doesn't have to be you. It can be anybody. And that is why that's different.
Yeah, the rules are written in such a way that, boy, in my heart, I know that it's not an inducement, and therefore it's not an inducement. And this is, this is the game that everyone is playing right now. And this is the natural byproduct of the organization who was in charge of figuring all this stuff out, completely abdicating that responsibility and just sort of throwing its hands in the air and going, fine, you guys figure it out. And so here we are. So, it does feel like between the announcement that came out about a week ago that the NCAA was sort of changing how they were going to approach the enforcement on this stuff, and it almost essentially is guilty until proven innocent when you're accused of something. That's maybe okay. So maybe the dozing policeman has woken up a little bit and is going to maybe start doing his job a little bit. But with some of this is also just going to be sort of the free market at work, and people realizing like, hey, sometimes you're going to promise a kid $10 million or $2 million or $500,000, and he's not going to do anything for you, and that will sort of regulate itself at some point too, where maybe the more veteran players start getting a little bit more money to stay, because having a more or less sure thing is a valuable thing. Having Tommy Eichenberg on the roster this year is a very valuable thing for Ohio State. Having CJ Stroud on the roster last year for Ohio State was a very valuable thing. So bringing in the recruits is great, but having those quality players, having Blake Corum come back to Michigan because he was able to get enough NIL money that the decision between NFL and staying with Michigan, that you sort of tilt the balance towards coming back towards Michigan. That kind of thing, that feels like that may end up being a bigger piece of this as things sort of move along, because you want to, people with money want to get a little ROI on that money. When you're doing the R, you want the I. When you're doing the I, you want the R. You want that return on investment. And veteran players are more of a sure thing if they're established than true freshmen, high school guys who, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
And if I see a collective bragging on Twitter about their impact on recruiting, then I will ask, where was your impact on keeping Luke Whippler at Ohio State? He's not going to command multi-million-dollar deal in the NFL, but he could have gotten enough to keep him at Ohio State for another year to improve his stock. But that didn't happen. So if some of these collectives want to start getting some credit, at some point is it okay to start then blaming them? And that's another question for another time, or maybe today. Tom, the NCAA thing is interesting to me, but I don't know who when you have these insinuations, these accusations, and really now that's all it's going to take to force a school to prove that they weren't involved. It's just basically, as the NCAA said, common sense and circumstantial evidence is all that it will take now. If they want to go forward, that will be enough to get them to go forward on a team. But then how much plausible deniability is there between a coach and a program and a third-party collective? But then also, the head coach should know. It's the institutional control thing again, where the coach may be able to deny that he's had any conversations with these collectives. And I've seen collectives and billionaires say, we don't talk to the coaches about what players they want. No, it's no secret which recruits schools want and are recruiting. I mean, you don't even have to pay for a subscription to a recruiting site to have this information at your fingertips. So that all, and it's where we get back to the common sense aspect of it, which if the NCAA could actually bring in common sense to this whole thing, I think it would be that could be an impact. And one last thing, and I'll turn it over to you guys. Dave Larman asks, what stops someone from NIL recruiting a super team? Say 7 of the top 50 getting big NIL money to come to a place to somewhere like Texas or Florida. I will remind you, Texas A&M signed 10 of the top 50 players in the 2022 class, and they are a shambles. Because why? Because they paid a bunch of money to sign 10 of the top 50 players in a class. And when you are going after players for money, that's not how you build a culture. That's not how you keep a locker room. That's not how you keep a team, because you pay them once. Has anybody ever asked just to be paid once for something?
Well,
we've seen the Mets try to do it, and it just doesn't work.
Not with Bobby Bonilla.
They've paid him more than once. I can assure you of that. It is. I think, you bring in these guys who are true freshmen, and you throw a bunch of money at them. Well, guess what? There are veteran players who are on the team who, in some cases, are better than the young guys. Guess what they're going to want? They're going to want to get paid. The freshmen who come in, they're going to want to get paid. Guess what you have to pay next year? The true freshmen next year. Now, I mean, I have not looked at the price of a barrel of oil recently, but at some point, even Texas A&M is going to run out of money. So that becomes a little bit self-limiting. And also, when you are a true freshman who is getting paid, I mean, I'm just going to throw a number out here. A true freshman who's coming in who's getting paid $500,000. If you are not playing, well, guess what? Your value is going down. If you are, your value is never higher as a recruit than right before you commit, when everyone is chasing you and everyone, it's the shiny new thing. And you are the guy who is flawless because everyone has only watched their huddle highlights, and then you get them on campus and it's like, oh, this guy missed a tackle that one time. Well, he's not quite as good as I thought he was. And this guy didn't even play last year. So are you going to give him another $500,000, or are you going to go from $500,000 to $100,000? And are you, this is the concept of the lifestyle you are accustomed to. Like if you made $500,000 your freshman year and you're only making $100,000 your second year, are you happy with that? Or have you grown accustomed to the lifestyle that $500,000 can provide for you that $100,000 perhaps can't, especially after taxes? So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that factors in, where this does, I think, ultimately does become sort of a self-regulating thing a little bit. And this is the free market thing. Every time you hear me talk about the free market, this is what I'm talking about. The other thing that I think is interesting about the NCAA thing is, who is the NCAA? Like, yes, it's a bunch of clowns in suits in Indianapolis, but also, who is the NCAA and who does the NCAA work for? And the answer is the schools. Because if the schools say, why don't you go take a hike, then the NCAA is, and all those folks are out of a job. So the fact that they are changing their enforcement mechanism, at least in theory, that tells me that schools are going, this needs to get fixed, and we need to figure out a way to solve this right now because the status quo is unsustainable. So that is, if the schools are driving the NCAA to make that change, and I would certainly think that they are based on how things typically work, that to me, if the schools are motivated to figure out another solution, they recognize that the status quo is not going to work. So therefore it is not going to be, the status quo will not remain the status quo forever.
And before Kevin talks, I just want to, Jordan Kapler brings up a good point. What's worse than the NCAA, and why is it Kevin Noon? Kevin?
Well, Jordan Kapler is worse than the NCAA and worse than Kevin Noon.
Let's not start insulting the listeners and viewers.
Yeah,
How dare you?
Only Jordan Kapler. It's not like I'm taking a shot at Odysseus or Dave Larman or Kyle Dubs or JJ or anybody like that. It's just Kapler. I'm just going to fight through this year so somebody else can be the target. It was already Todd, and now it's me, and next it'll be Tom Lavender. And then after that, I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
I value all of our listeners and viewers, but I guess I'm just built different. Maybe that's why I have not been the target. Ever think of that? Jerk.
Maybe it's because I can't believe I'm siding with Todd here. We have fantastic personalities that just draw a lot of things, and you just have lavender voices that just makes everybody peaceful.
People with fantastic personalities, kind people with fantastic personalities, typically the target of everyone's ire. That's typically how the universe works. Yes, go on.
Tom is like a bath in your ears.
Bath salts.
All right, let's get to some of these questions.
Let's go right here. I'm hoping that's a goat, not a horse.
No, I think is it a jackass?
Is that a poop emoji? I think it's a poop emoji.
It's a donkey pooping.
Oh, poor Tom. Kyle Dubs.
I lost all the fan. I like that. I like the singular use of the singular there. Tom, you lost all the fan you had by saying that we should love and value our subscribers, listeners, and viewers. Yes, that's this seems like a very strange kink.
Hey, now don't you start shaming the viewers, Tom. Not both of you. Jordan Kapler, the first question that was started, what former OSU player would you guys like to see on staff? My vote forever and always will be JT Barrett. How about this one? I'll throw out to you guys. At some point, James Laurinaitis is going to be a full-time coach, and then there will be a graduate assistant spot open. I'm going to throw Anthony Schlegel in there.
To teach him how to go like wild boar hunting with like a knife. I mean, that dude was nuts.
That's something everybody needs to know.
That dude was nuts.
Listen, you think like you get guys like Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks on this roster. You give Sonny Styles the ability and knowledge of how to hunt and kill a wild boar with just your hands and a knife. Now you've got a defense.
Are you saying that's not the kind of knowledge you just pick up sort of like through osmosis by growing up in Pickerington? Maybe my impressions of Pickerington are incorrect, but that seems
there's no room for any wild boar out here. Every vacant lot is now under construction. I mean, you've been out here, you know how it is.
Hunting wild bulldozers. That's
exactly wild contractors.
Yeah,
orange barrels.
The orange barrels, the most dangerous game. Yes. I think there are some good choices that are already actually in the coaching business. If you pull up the Tennessee State coaching staff, there are a whole lot of familiar names there. Eddie George is the head coach, but Pepe Pearson's, I think, the running back coach, and Richard McNutt is on that staff as a defensive assistant. I think if Eddie George has a long way to go, and there's a lot of steps between Tennessee State and Ohio State. But, if Eddie George kind of continues in his career and enjoys coaching and, starts to really build a resume there, Ohio State head coach Eddie George at some point 8-10 years down the line that would be kind of an interesting, exciting idea to me if he chooses to stick with the head coaching thing. He is obviously not the former Buckeye who would be the most likely to get the head coaching job if it happened. If it opens up in 3 years or 5 years or whatever, that would be Luke Fickell, and then maybe Marcus Freeman after that if Marcus Freeman wants to take a step up in his position. But I think Eddie George at some point would be. It's sort of a long shot, but I think that would be a really interesting Ohio State coaching hire at some point down the line.
I'll go with Malcolm Jenkins. I think that just what he's meant in terms of the communities he's lived in, just his career. I think that he is somebody that would really connect well with these players. I think that he's somebody that would really. He's done it all. I mean, I think that he would be, I know what Jordan's saying. We had somebody else in here talking about JT being at the JT being with the Lions. But I think, thinking outside the box, that Malcolm Jenkins is somebody that could, if he ever wanted to get into coaching, I think that would be a home run type of situation. I mean, obviously you got to cut your teeth somewhere, but I could see that one working out.
I missed one name, by the way, on the Tennessee State coaching staff. Do you know who their tight ends coach is?
Is it Ricky Dudley?
It is Michael Brewster. Michael Brewster is.
There you go. Yeah.
Wow.
Did you know that Ricky Dudley used to be a college basketball coach? He coached at SM. He was an assistant coach at SMU for basketball for a while. A few years back. He, of course, was a basketball player at Ohio State before he was a football player. So that's not just like completely random, but that was. And then he had a son who was camping at Ohio State a few years ago. I don't remember where he ended up going to college, but yes. TLDR, we're all getting old.
Really young too, though. I thought.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, I think he was really young.
I think Malcolm Jenkins would be incredible. I just wonder if he would see that as too small in terms of just being associated with one program. Because he's a guy that feels like he wants to impact more, and he would have to realize the impact. You can have a large impact at one spot, so I think just his view of the impact that he wants to have. I don't know if coaching is too small for him, but I think he would be amazing at that. And I always tell the story about the legend of him camping at Ohio State when he was trying to earn an offer from Ohio State. This kid from New Jersey, this 3-star defensive back, viewed him as a safety. Ohio State sees him just cutting in front of lines at camps to go continue to compete and earn an offer, and becomes an All-American cornerback. Starts as a true freshman for, I think, the second half of the season when Tyler Everett went down. He was one of those guys. That was the whole 3-star heaven era of Ohio State. AJ Hawk, Malcolm Jenkins, all of these guys that were just incredible almost like right out of the box. And he would be amazing. In terms of how good JT Barrett is in Detroit as a coach, he's just like an offensive assistant. There's no way to know. I mean, at this point.
Right.
Plus the NFL, like I don't know. I mean, is that
Detroit's
a thing?
in the Super Bowl, right?
Is that still a thing, or is that like the USFL where it went away and then it came back, and then it's Arena Football League coming back? That's very big. Yeah, there's a lot of. I think Tony has actually gotten the answer correct there.
Going to the fairgrounds and watching the old AFL Columbus games, like the first iteration of AFL, not the Destroyers, whatever they were, that ended up moving to Cleveland. That's how much I cared. But like Major Harris was quarterback for them. It was fun because we would get to go there and you could get in pretty cheap and drink a couple pops and watch a little football.
You think of the Browns?
No, not the Browns. I'm not gonna make any comments about the Browns.
You can't. That's right. Odysseus 2002. What about Vrabel? No. I mean, there is no way Mike Vrabel is coming to college with the way college is right now and with the way college was when he left, because he left for a reason. So I don't ever expect him to come back. Yes, it's the alma mater and it's mom's calling, and so you have to come home. I don't think he has the kind of attachment to the college game. Obviously he loves Ohio State, but you like your your health of life, like your current existence, more than what it would do to you if you decided to. Like, it's one thing if you're born into it and it's all you've ever known. Once you get out of it and then have to come back to it, man, I don't know if the muscle memory is still there, and you're going to hit a lot of knees and hamstrings popping, dealing with all of the recruiting.
We'll get back to JJ's question in a second, but I do like this Dave Larman comment here. Last question or shameless plug. How does someone become a member of Buckeye Huddle? Tony?
Well, you can go to Buckeye Huddle right now, and I believe up in the there's a link at the top that says subscribe today, and you go ahead and click there, and you put your information in, the credit card information. You can become a member for a month at a time for a certain amount, or you can become an annual member, and it's a larger amount, but that's you catch yourself a little bit of a deal. It's cheaper than the month-to-month option, month-to-month. But become a member there. Say hello to us on the message board. Read all of the premium stuff. We just started in this past week. Mark Givler and Alex Kleitman doing a Monday through Friday daily recruiting notebook, giving you constant updates about what's going on the recruiting trail with the Buckeyes. Obviously, we're here on the message board as well. And, it's a growing community. It's a pretty peaceful community. But there is still, it's not an echo chamber. It's respectful arguing, I guess I would say, because it's certainly not everybody stepping in line with each other. There's certainly disagreements about the way things should go. And if you lose to Michigan a couple times every couple of years, obviously things aren't bright and sunny all the time. And certainly the discussions on the message board would echo that.
Dissenting opinions allowed. I think that's the phrase you were looking for.
There you go. It is not discouraged.
Right. I mean, and it's not off the top rope type of battle royal. I mean, we do have sometimes that things get a little heated, but I think more times than not, that's more about the Browns or whatever than it is about Ohio State. I mean, but yeah, give it a shot. Try the monthly option if you're not so sure. Stick with us for a month. Get everything leading up through the NFL Scouting Combine, which is coming up here at the end of the month, and get ready for winter conditioning, which is right around the corner with mat drills, and then the start of spring ball. But you can check us out for the price of a crummy delivery pizza. I mean, hanging out with Tom and Tony and Mark and Alex and everybody else, yours truly as well, is easily worth the price of a crummy delivery pizza.
I think my favorite comment so far from Kyle Dubs, if the other two could reiterate that it isn't an echo chamber, I would believe you. Please use the same verbiage. That is tremendous content. 10 of 10, no notes. I did want to get back to a question from JJ, which is, other than Laurinaitis, what other former Buckeyes could coach the linebackers? My thoughts are AJ Hawk or Chris Spielman. Chris Spielman feels like if Chris Spielman was going to be a college assistant coach, he would have been a college assistant coach 20 years ago. He actually, speaking of the Arena Football League, did coach the Columbus Destroyers Arena Football League team for I think 1 year, and I think won 0 games, and I think had his fill of football coaching at that point. So I think he's probably out at this point. And AJ Hawk is kind of doing the media personality thing. And I think you're seeing with some coaches who have gone from coaching to the media personality thing, it's a lot less travel. Like Dan Mullen did not seem real eager to throw his hat back in the coaching ring this year after sitting out a year and being on the media circuit. I think there's, a lot fewer late nights in the office and a lot less travel to go visit 16-year-old kids and all of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I would be fairly surprised if either of those guys were the next ones, just because they're both sort of doing something that they they both made a bunch of money in the pros, so it's not like they need a 9-to-5, so they can kind of do whatever they want to do. And I think there's only a small percentage of guys who made a bunch of money who then would choose to go spend a lot of time in airports and high schools and grinding film at the Woody and all of that kind of stuff. Because you're not just going to walk in and start as the head coach. This is not Ed Reed walking into Bethune-Cookman. Or Deion Sanders walking into Jackson State. You are going to start, and you're going to start kind of low on the totem pole and work your way up. And the bottom of the totem pole in college football coaching is not a particularly glamorous spot, and it is definitely not for everyone.
Yeah, I was going to say you're more likely to see like a Craig Fada end up being a coach there than you are to see an AJ Hawk or a Bobby Carpenter. I want to throw another name out that I just thought of, sliding down to the defensive line. How about John Simon?
He would be, I mean, you could put him on the defensive line staff. You could also put him on the strength staff. Like he has real strong strength coach vibes to me, where, you know, he spent, I get the sense that he spent some time in the weight room when he was at Ohio State, but also he has the intensity of a strength and conditioning coach. And when I say that, you either know what I mean or you don't. And if you know what I mean, then you know who John Simon is. And if you know who John Simon is, you know what the strength or the intensity of a strength and conditioning coach is. So it works kind of either direction there.
I remember, I think it was Urban or Mickey Marotti talking about John Simon when he was playing there. I think they had to like encourage him to remind him to take some guys to the weight room, because he would go, you know, every day or whatever, like 6 a.m. And then I just imagine him like kidnapping teammates to go to the weight room. Like, no, you're going, and like, you know, have no say in the matter, and they're just being dragged along, you know, campus to the Woody. But he's a good one. And again, there's a number of them, and a lot of them, like James Laurinaitis, crediting Jim Tressel and Luke Fickell, and it's the coaches that wanted that you learn from, that you want to emulate. And James Laurinaitis said that he was enjoying the media thing because it kept him close enough to the game to keep the juices flowing, but eventually he just wanted to be part of a team again and something greater than just talking about it. He wanted to be doing it. And so just watching him, listening to him, being around him, he really seems committed to this. And he was also committed to Notre Dame. I didn't realize they sold their house to go to South Bend for that GA position. Like that's a pretty big commitment that you wouldn't just, you know, rent to see, even if it's a couple of years, you know, just to see how things are going to go. Because again, this was your first foray into coaching, and he went head first, and I don't expect anything different from him moving forward. Tony Girdman's burner account. When will Ryan Day contact Tony to find out if he's returning for a super senior year of eligibility? Me or Ryan? Like, because this is 19, 20. This is Ryan's 5th year, so he's still got one more year of eligibility. If he chooses, although I guess the 18 would have been the redshirt year because he only head coached in 3 games. So is this technically, or is he just talking about me?
He's talking about you.
You simp.
My eligibility is over for so many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
My knee hurts right now sitting here.
If you look at the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed on your podcast platform of choice, you will realize this is year 7. This is season 7 of the Buckeye Weekly podcast. So look
this
at
today
us.
is, what episode number is this today, Tom?
Oh, this is episode number 800, right? I think it is.
It is. Look how we've planned and prepared for that.
Look at that. The 800th episode spectacular. Season 7, 800 episodes.
And right now, every $800 super chat will get put in line to have their answer questions or question answered.
Let's just title this episode, "What Are We Doing with Our Lives?" That's
exactly. Wow. Mark Fetter, not a knock on Day. Do you really think he gets the Michigan rivalry not being an Ohio guy?
I think once you lose to Michigan, you get it immensely. And he got it as an assistant at Ohio State. I don't think you need to be at Ohio to get it. I think you need to be in it to get it. And he's been in it. And you lose it and you get it even more. I think I still think I wouldn't put this on the coaches as much as the players, where it just becomes this assumed thing, and this rivalry should never be assumed. And I don't think Ryan Day assumed it. I think maybe some players did, but also there is some coaching malpractice as well in this past game. So it's not just on the players, obviously, but I absolutely think he gets the Michigan rivalry.
Yeah, I don't think you can work on staff with Urban Meyer for 2 years and not kind of get it by osmosis, even if you walked in not really knowing, was Ryan Day setting his alarm and making sure he was sitting in front of the TV in 1994 to watch the Ohio State Michigan game at noon on ABC. I kind of maybe, but I couldn't guarantee that. But once you spend a couple of years with Urban Meyer inside the building with It's Time for War playing 24/7. I mean, I think at some point you sort of start to grasp the significance of the rivalry in terms of the program and the state and all that kind of stuff. And as Tony said, if you don't get it, try losing it once or twice, and then find out how often you get asked about it. And then, I don't think not understanding the significance of the rivalry is the issue. That at this point, there's a lot of pressure on them to win next year, and the game's in Ann Arbor, and Michigan has a returning quarterback, and a good chunk of their offensive line back and all that. So, if they lose in Ann Arbor next year, I don't think that I would put Ryan Day does not understand the rivalry at the top of the list of the reasons why.
I think a lot of people have PTSD over the hiring of John Cooper, bringing somebody from completely outside of things. And John Cooper didn't help himself by kind of underselling the importance of the rivalry. I don't necessarily know the quote off of the top of my head, but it wasn't great. And then 2-10-1 certainly didn't help. So I think that there's still a kind of a shadow from there that, maybe falls under Ryan Day because he was not directly out of the state of Ohio type of tree. I mean, honestly, I lived in New Hampshire for a couple of years. You're lucky if anybody up there's talking about college football, to be quite honest. I mean, I guess BC is the closest team of any consequence, and that's that's pretty thin right there. But he gets it. And as Tom said, now it's a matter of there being pressure. Now it's not even as much of a matter of, oh, I don't get this or whatever. It's you have a game canceled, and then you lose, you lose the one up there, then you lose the one here, and now it's like, oh snap! It's been a minute since we've handed out any gold pant charms. So I don't think that at any point do I see it as a case of him not getting the rivalry, not understanding the rivalry, not cherishing the rivalry. Going to cherish it more when you're on the winning end of it, and that's the mountain that has to be climbed this year.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting scenarios that would have had to have happened, you mentioned the gold pants. Say Ohio State this past year, they don't beat Michigan in the regular season, but they beat them in the playoffs. Do they get gold pants? And I don't know that the Gold Pants Society had an answer for that, because that's not a scenario where it's not something you think about, but also that regular season game means a lot. And the legend when Andy Geiger was interviewing Mike Bellotti and to replace John Cooper, and Bellotti asked, you guys don't play Michigan every year, do you? That sort of thing, where that's the one thing you don't want to say in an interview for the Ohio State football job is, you guys don't play Michigan every year, do you?
And we're done here.
So, pretty much. And then we haven't gotten to a point where Ryan Day's like, you guys are still talking about this Michigan thing. Like, he understands it's Tom's like, Dr. Nick, oh God, the corner, I hate that. I'm so sick of that guy. That sort of thing. You're talking about Michigan, I'm so sick of these guys. So no, he definitely gets it. King Bronco, thank you for the super chat.
Read the words in any order. It doesn't matter.
Chaps and chips, sung to us if Harbaugh. Well said.
That's King Bronco Yoda.
Yes, and now we know Jim Harbaugh is definitely coming back to Michigan based on what happened this past week of another chat that didn't go anywhere. I scheduled a tweet a couple of days ago for September 2nd at like 10 a.m. to say like, Jim Harbaugh has officially decided to coach Michigan this season. So that will be, that'll set out like 2 hours before their noon kickoff, I'm assuming, because that's pretty much, you never know with this guy. Like, he could choose to leave at any point. Let's talk about this from Nate and eight. What value does Parker Fleming, the special teams coordinator, add to the staff, to recruiting, to the special teams? I would argue, based on what we saw this season from the Ohio State special teams, Parker Fleming showed beyond a shadow of a doubt that you need a dedicated special teams coordinator. However, he did this by showing all of the things that went wrong with the special teams. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where, yes, Ohio State needed a full-time guy, because they were not very good, and there are a lot of issues. So there are so many issues. You can't just have a part-time guy doing this. You need it to be a full-time. But if you think of this as a special teams coordinator, as a maintenance guy in an apartment building, and he's not fixing stuff properly, and there's leaks are springing, like, yes, you need a full-time maintenance guy, or maybe just tighten tighten everything properly and get the pipes fitted properly, and you can just do it with a part-time guy. I think some of the problems are Parker Fleming's own doing. And Tom, were you over there when he was talking about, or no, you looked through the transcription to find out about the fourth down call, the fake punt against Michigan, where who do you make sure that everybody gets the call? And there's just this lack of communication on that play, and there's just so many faulty things with the special teams this year.
Yeah, you had big issues in big moments, and you had that. I think they had 12 guys on the field when they ran they were going to run the fake punt, and Georgia called timeout, which, it's the same play, and it's a crucial game-swinging play in both moments, and you didn't get it executed correctly. Like if you execute it correctly and the other team stops you, you tip your hat and you say, okay, then that's fine. But you didn't execute it correctly either time, and it's like that's a really, those are probably the two biggest special teams plays of the year, other than the field goal at the end of the Peach Bowl. Mm-hmm. And it didn't get run correctly either time. And the whole point of having a full-time special teams coach is that you have the time to have the attention to detail and the communication and all that kind of stuff. Like, he's the guy on the sideline who's communicating to all these guys. You can't have that kind of problems. He's not someone who is a name you hear a lot from recruits when you're talking about, you hear Brian Hartline's name a lot, even when you're not talking to wide receivers. Like South Florida guys, like you'll hear a lot about Brian Hartline. You don't hear a ton about him on the recruiting trail. To me, it feels like if you want to keep him on staff, like, I am not in a position to evaluate his 24/7, 365 job performance. So if you want to keep him on staff by all means. Give him the same salary he's had, keep him in the same office he's had, whatever, but don't make him one of the 10 on-field assistants. You're better off having, James Laurinaitis be in that role, where then James Laurinaitis can go recruit off campus. He can go out, he can go out and go to high schools. He can go out and recruit, do in-home visits, all that kind of stuff. He feels like he's going to be, I think the expectation is that he's going to be a very dynamic recruiter for them. And if the difference there then on game days is that, you can't be talking on the headsets, or, whatever, that there's a bunch of little stupid NCAA minutia about what you can and can't do when you're not one of the 10 countable assistants. That seems like a relatively small, like there are workarounds for that. Michigan does not have a dedicated special teams coach. Jay Harbaugh does that, but he also coaches the safeties, I believe. Georgia has a GA who does their special teams. Like, I looked those up this week just as just to pick two teams at random, for example. Just like, how do other schools handle this? And neither of them has a dedicated 100% full-time special teams assistant. So there are obviously workarounds for this. So it feels like you should probably be exploring a workaround for this, because if you have someone who's not a particularly dynamic recruiter and you can replace them with a dynamic recruiter or a potentially dynamic recruiter, that feels like that would be a good idea right now, as you're trying to, come up with ways to work around whatever the NIL stuff is going on, whatever all the other stuff is going on. Like, that is a comfort and relationships business. You want to have, and then plus also you'd have 5 defensive assistants on field at all times, which you can't right now because you only have 4, because you have 5 offensive assistants with an offensive-minded head coach. So there's a lot of that, again, if you want to keep Parker Fleming, by all means, keep Parker Fleming. I have no issue with Parker Fleming. Pay him the same salary, keep him in the same office, but just, it feels like in terms of resource allocation, that might be a better, smarter move.
Yeah, I've
Kevin,
there.
Okay.
I agree with everything there. I mean, it was, certainly some questionable moments at the biggest moments, and they got to do better. And I think that I'm not here to tell anybody how to run their department or anything else, or move anybody out of positions, but you're Ohio State. I think you could sit there and keep Parker Fleming in the same type of role as an analyst or something, where he's doing the same thing, and have James Laurinaitis be that additional recruiting coach, or however you want to handle it. It's just, I don't know. I have an issue with where special teams were this year, and you just really shouldn't have those types. You can't really have any excuses when you have a full-time guy, one of your 10 in that position.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, I looked to see how many dedicated special teams coordinators there were, and at the point, the top 13 teams in the rankings, 5 of them had a full-time special teams guy, a sole special teams guy. So I don't know what that is now. I plan on asking Ryan Day about it the next time we talk to him. So I plan on having more information about, is it even fewer, a lower percentage now, and whether it is or not. Are you getting what you should be getting out of a full-time special teams coordinator with the special teams you had this year, when you're not really interested in returning kicks? So there's only so much, developing and diagramming there. So I think obviously it needs to be better. And if it's not, then that's certainly a bad sign for everybody, Parker Fleming most of all. Kyle Dubs, I hope Knowles allows Laurinaitis to have a good amount of responsibility with the linebackers. I know he loves to coach them as well. I know Knowles said he'll focus on scheme and Laurinaitis will be technique, and I was over with James Laurinaitis for a lot of his session, and one of the things he didn't want to give up was the responsibility he had at Notre Dame, the level of it. And he wanted to have that same level of responsibility at Ohio State. And it may not be that immediately. He's going to have to earn it. But the feeling was that, yeah, this is going to be your room, because it was Coy McFarland's room before he left for Tulsa with Kevin Wilson. Coy McFarland was graduate assistant for coaching linebackers for Ohio State last year. He came over with Jim Knowles at Oklahoma State. So I don't know, Kevin, I don't see this being an issue for, I think Laurinaitis is going to have plenty of ownership. And the fact that we even got to talk to him, we don't get to talk to graduate assistants ever. He may have been the first one that I ever remember talking to.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be fine there. I think the setup is going to be that he is going to assume the Coy McFarland role for sure. He will have the benefit of going through spring and everything else to kind of get his feet under him and to, earn his keep, so to speak. I mean, he's here. He's not on a provisional basis or anything. This isn't a tryout for a couple months and we'll let you know or anything. I mean, he is filling that Coy McFarland role. So he will be able to take, those responsibilities, leaving Jim Knowles with, similar to what he had before. Now, maybe if you sit there and you see that James Laurinaitis is able to take on a little bit more, does Jim Knowles, maybe cede a couple more of the responsibilities over to Laurinaitis? I don't know. I mean, remember that when they brought in Jim Knowles, I mean, his main duty was to be the head coach of the defense, and that's what's got to be there. And, in the laboratory, they got to figure out how to turn 5 explosive plays into no explosive plays, and they have to make some decisions with things like that. And I think that it's going to be important with a lot of new pieces that Jim Knowles is able to look at all 3 levels of the defense and not be saddled down with a ton of responsibilities. And that's what at the linebacker position, that's what McFarland gave him, and that's what Laurinaitis is going to be asked to him too.
Yeah, Kyle Dubs. I was just going to read the same question again. Trying to get through these starred questions. I know what I'm doing. We're wrapping up here. Dave, here, some folks making a big deal out of Pantone's NIL-related recruiting comments. I see it as really no big deal. Your thoughts? We talked about this earlier in the show, about midway through, maybe a little bit earlier. So feel free to go back through that. Did we cover all of the?
I mean, essentially, he said, if guys are focused, motivated almost solely or largely by NIL and not by development and all that kind of stuff, they may kind of back away and just sort of say, you may be a better cultural fit at a different program. And this is, that didn't strike me as remotely controversial when he said it, and it still doesn't strike you as remotely controversial. I mean, do you think that they have never backed away from a good football player before for off-field / makeup / personality reasons? Like, this happens all the time. There are plenty of very good players who in some cases ended up turning out to be pretty good players at other schools who they have looked at and said, like, you may not be a great fit for our program. And they back away and then you go get someone else. So yeah, I didn't think that was remotely surprising or remotely, I think if you ask 130 programs or 131 FBS programs, I would bet you would get largely the same answer from about 125 of them, maybe more.
Yeah, it's not the first time they've backed away from somebody wanting money.
Right. Well, and the funny thing too is, maybe not funny. There'll be a top 10 kid and Ohio State hasn't offered, and you kind of hear things on the recruiting trail, and then I get asked on the message board, why isn't Ohio State recruiting this kid or whatever? And well, just not necessarily a fit or whatever. And and that's not saying, oh wow, now I can go back and be like, well, they didn't offer this kid. He obviously had his hand out. But I think it's going to be a little bit more obvious on some of these kids that are NIL driven. That'll be brought to the surface a lot quicker, I think. And you'll see the programs that are completely cool with paying kids up front, landing these guys. And then, you're just going to have to kind of go on from there.
Yeah. And we were talking about this earlier, the buying the recruit that then the freshman doesn't play. The best way to make himself valuable again is to become a recruit again by going into the transfer portal and just resetting the shopping spree. So it's just a constant dealing with that sort of thing. Once you get into it, you can't get out of it, especially with these certain players. Jordan Kapler here. Not to be the old man that shakes fist at clouds, but do you think the OSU fan base as a whole doesn't know what a true bad season is, or is the outrage more of a minority, Tom?
I think there's not a question that the Ohio State fan base on the whole doesn't know what a truly bad season is. I mean, you go back and over the last, let's say, I started really following Ohio State football in 1993 when I was in high school. Since then, they had a 4-loss season in 1994. They had a 6-loss season in 1999. They had a 4-loss season or 5-loss season in 2000, 5-loss season in 2001, 4-loss season in 2004, and then the one random 7-loss season in 2011. Other than that, that's it. Do you know how many times? When was the last time Ohio State lost 2 Big Ten games in a season? Do you remember?
2011.
2011. That's 2 Big Ten games in a season. So they are, 7-1 or 8-1 or 9-1 in some cases in the Big Ten play every year since, except for 2020 when they didn't play that many games, but since 2011. I mean, this is, I remember thinking about Florida State and how Florida State would just run through the ACC every year. And it was like, oh boy, Florida State's 75-3 in ACC play. I was like, wow, can you imagine? Like, sure, they're not winning the national championship every year, but can you imagine having a program like that? Like, that must be incredible. And then, Ohio State is, I don't know off the top of my head what exactly their Big Ten record is since 2012, but I mean, we can sit here and count up the losses. They lost the 1 to Michigan State in 2013. They lost the 1 to Michigan State in 2015. They lost the 1 to Penn State in 2016. Iowa in 2017, Purdue in 2018. They did not lose any in 19 or 20, Michigan in 21, Michigan in 22. There you go. I'm not even out of fingers yet, and we've just done 11 seasons of Big Ten play. So, I mean, yes. If you think this is a disaster, yes, you are spoiled. I mean, every year if they don't make the playoff, and the Rose Bowl is a possibility, or if there's a possibility that I can make the playoff and the Rose Bowl is a possibility, I'm on these shows saying, hey, if they go to the Rose Bowl, you should go to the Rose Bowl because it's really fantastic experience and it's a great game and you should absolutely do it once before you die. And you've got people in there in the comments basically say, I would rather kill myself than go to the Rose Bowl. What are you talking about? Like if they're 11-1 and they go to the Rose Bowl, that actually would constitute a successful season in all but, the most
anywhere else.
Addled brain. Yeah, literally anywhere else other than like Alabama or maybe Georgia. And, Georgia just a couple of years ago went Kirby Smart's first season. I think Georgia went to the Independence Bowl, or the Music City Bowl, one of those. if you can't take any joy in anything short of a national championship season, this may not be the sport for you, because rather famously, only one team gets to win the national championship every year, and there are 131 teams. So there are a lot of teams that have not won the national championship in a long, long, long time, and somehow their fans are taking joy in that. So, I'm sure Ohio State fans would be happier if they beat Michigan this upcoming year. But if they beat Michigan and then lose in the national championship game to Alabama this year, there are going to be people who say, this is a failure. You have to, I think you have to sort of recalibrate your expectations a little bit, because you are not going to be perfect every year. No one is perfect every year. Alabama just missed the college football playoff this very year. It just happened. So if it can happen to Nick Saban, friends, it can happen to you.
Yeah.
But there are people still retroactively trying to put them back in there for this year, just based on, oh, they're Bama. They're Bama.
Well, let's not pretend that's not something State fans have done once or twice, or let's see, 2013, 2015, 2017, 2018.
I will say, remember, even beyond the past 50 years, Ohio State has won 2 national championships. So you're talking less than 4% of the time you're actually successful. I mean, that's not exactly a working belief system. Let's get through these starred questions. Matthew Miller: if Day coaches like he did in the CFP this year and we get our D fixed, we will be unstoppable. Marv gets 15 catches a game, and Mecca gets 10-ish, and run the dang ball better. Run the QB at least 5 times a game. Marvin is not going to get 15 catches a game.
That would be something.
Then you're talking, I don't know, like 180 catches on the season. He should get 15 targets, even though he won't. That's a lot of targets. Mecca probably 6 or 7 catches a game. I running the ball better. Again, this is a brand new offensive line. You've got 2 guys on the interior returning. I do think the quarterback will run the ball a little bit more. And I don't even know if you need to run it 5 times. It's just the threat of running is that we always talk about. But obviously picking up some first downs with your legs would help. I think these numbers are a little high. Certainly possible on PlayStation, but I don't see 15 catches a game from Marv, even though if you just throw it to him 16 times, you're probably getting 15 catches.
Yeah, if he averages the school record for catches in a game, and he averages that this season, that would be impressive. 15 catches a game for him, 10 for Mecca, 5 quarterback runs. You're already at 30 snaps. You've got a whole bunch of running backs. They've got 5 good running backs. You've got other wide receivers that you're going to want the ball to go to every once in a while. And of course, Tony, got to remember, in the year of the tight end, I think you've got to remember you got to put in 17, 18 throws to tight end. I mean, eventually you're gonna have to run a real fast tempo offense if you want to get all those snaps in.
Well, and again, these 15 catches and the 10 catches, we're assuming that's just 25 plays. We know that wouldn't be the case either. But you really can't feed Marvin and Emeka enough this year. I think we can all agree on that. Odysseus 2002, the safety play needs to improve. Jim Knowles said he thinks this group could be more versatile, more flexible. They're saying they're not sure if Jihad Carter is a deep safety or a nickel safety at this point. Jim Knowles talking up Cam Martinez on Wednesday. Perry Eliano said he has a pretty good feel for where they're going to be, and I think we probably – let's find out. Kevin, who are your 3 starting safeties this year for the Indiana game?
Oh, geez. Let me think this one. Let's go to Tom first. Let me think this one through.
I think my 3 starting safeties are Jihad Carter, Sonny Styles, and Lathan Ransom. I think Lathan Ransom is my adjuster. Jihad Carter is my nickel, and Sonny Styles is my bandit. But I don't know that Sonny Styles is going to play a whole bunch somewhere. Is that going to be at the bandit, which is their boundary safety? Is that going to be at the bandit spot? Are they going to have him in some kind of a linebacker hybrid kind of spot? Is he just going to be like a straight up linebacker? Maybe one of those things, probably. But I think those 3 guys are likely to be the three of the four who get the most snaps at safety this year.
Kevin?
I feel, I mean, out of the three in plugging guys into positions, I feel most comfortable in saying Ransom will have his spot at the free. I don't think you go out and get Jahad Carter and not put him out there. I mean, I think you got him. And then Sonny Styles is just too good not to have on the field, but is he going, I mean, can he hold off a veteran in Josh Proctor? I mean, that's a big ask there. I mean, I don't care how talented you are. If you got somebody that's got multiple years of starting experience, and I mean, I'm just gonna say Ty goes to the veteran in this one, and I'm gonna give it to Proctor.
Oh, Kevin, I think what you have failed to realize is that the last couple of games, I'm not sure Sonny Styles didn't already pass Josh Proctor as a strong safety, or at least in a role. But again, Josh Proctor started the last two seasons.
Certainly in
please, sir.
Support. Sir.
Sir. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, yeah, we saw him out there early against Georgia. I mean, in obvious situations before Darnell Washington got hurt and they needed to have somebody that was a bigger body to be able to deal with their 12 personnel.
Well, and we still haven't really seen Sonny as that bandit. But as Jim Knowles said, Sonny's going to be somewhere, and he said that on Wednesday. Now, my theory is, and I'm with Tom, I've got that same theory. However, I think you can see Sonny slide down at times and be that not nickel, but Sam, and then Jahad Carter just slides, like they trade positions. Basically, Jahad Carter goes back to deep, and then Sonny Styles comes up, just depending on like running downs versus passing downs, that sort of thing, where you don't even need to replace guys, because you can have Sonny be, I mean, he was a de facto third linebacker against Georgia in their 12 personnel. So I think those three you can keep out there for any number of plays, and you don't necessarily have to rotate them or get them to pull them off the field. I think that's an intriguing look for me.
I'll throw this out here too. We're talking about opening day, first series or whatever. So generally, I always feel more comfortable defaulting to the known quantities on that first series of the first game before you have any real data points.
And we'll know in the spring what that first lineup will probably be, because if Sonny is out there right away, that's going to be a pretty good sign, Tom.
Yeah, if he is, that would be impressive. I think the other guy that's a young guy who I could see being someone who gets a lot of snaps this year is Kai Stokes. And he, that's another one where if he comes in and he's out there, just snap one, game one, that would be really significant to me. He feels like someone who over the course of the season, he may end up within that top 3, 4, maybe 5 in terms of snaps at one of the safety positions. You got Josh Proctor in there too. You got Cam Martinez in there too. I mean, they have a lot of options there. And if you are going to slide some guys around, if Jahad Carter really could fit in a couple different spots, that gives you a lot of different possible lineup combinations there.
If Kai Stokes comes in and wins that adjuster spot, that free safety spot, to me, that takes the ceiling of the defense even higher, because he is then taken over that role from, I assume Lathan Ransom will probably be that guy. He's the most veteran of that group, Josh Proctor as well, but they seem to like Josh Proctor to bandit more. If Kai Stokes can come in and defeat the seniors for that job, and then allow all of this combination of whomever to be the bandit and whatever else you've got Kai Stokes doing, I think that might give them a higher ceiling defensively with the young, talented guy that you've seen everybody else in terms of those free safeties. And I don't think we're going to talk about Sonny Styles as that free safety, but if you're that bandit, you need to be able to obviously play some deep safety, which he would, but I don't think they're going to be looking at him as the adjuster, that free safety. David Essler, is it possible that Parker Fleming underperformance will be addressed, but maybe not in the time frame that others think would be prudent? The stud situation took a while, but was addressed. And Tom, I think the NCAA rules here have maybe gotten into the proposed coaching changes.
Right. The NCAA was supposed to be voting on a rule to allow more than 10 on-field assistants. Right now, you're limited to 10 guys who are the quote-unquote on-field assistants, who those are the names you basically know of the Ohio State assistant coaches, the average fan. And those are the guys who can go on the road and recruit, and there's some other restrictions on what they can and can't do on game days. The NCAA was supposed to be voting on a rule to lift that cap, either to some other number or just basically make it unlimited. And that was supposed to happen in early January, and then it didn't happen. And I think that probably screwed up the hiring cycle and some of the personnel moves that a lot of different coaches would have liked to have made with their staffs over the course of the offseason. So, if and when that rule happens, I think that would definitely be a time when that would change. I think that, yes, Parker Fleming is not going to be the exactly in the exact same role as he is until the heat death of the universe. It just, it feels like, okay, at some point, I'm sure there is a plan for James Laurinaitis. And so at what point does the James Laurinaitis plan take its next step? And is that after this season? Is that when if and when a rule gets passed sometime this spring, summer, whatever, by the NCAA? Maybe it's that. Maybe you're waiting on another move. I mean, there are other, it's possible someone else on the staff gets hired away to go take some other job somewhere. I mean, there's lots of possibilities. I don't think he's, it feels like if that move was going to get made, it would have gotten made already. So it feels like they're waiting on something else to make that move, or they just don't feel that that's, that Ryan Day may disagree that that's the correct path forward with this for whatever reason. So, yeah, I think again, it will. James Laurinaitis will be a one of the 10 on-field assistants for Ohio State, or the unlimited number of on-field assistants for Ohio State at some point. But just for whatever reason, it hasn't happened yet.
I think if he shows that he's as solid a recruiter as we believe he is, and recruits are saying he is, Mark and Alex have both talked to top linebacker recruits who really like James Laurinaitis. By not allowing him to travel, you're doing it. You're hampering the Ohio State recruiting machine, and this is an Ohio State program that has not had an out-of-state linebacker commit or signed since 2020 with Cody Simon and Mitchell Melton. So, you can't just survive on Ohio linebackers alone, even though you're only playing 2 at a time.
Even with as good as C.J. Hicks and Gabe Powers will probably end up proving to be.
Mm-hmm. And Tommy Eichenberg and Reed Carrico, there's been some good Ohio linebackers, but I'm not sure in the history of the last 30 years that you can just survive on those guys. Although, I was going to say the Andy Katzenmoyer, Ryan Miller, Greg Belisari, but the Belisaris are Florida guys, so even then. This from Jordan Kapler and Kevin. We're trying to make this an hour show. If you keep starring questions,
I like a lot of these questions. We could do this rapid fire, and we do one question.
Okay.
One person answers on to the next one.
All right, Kevin.
We're an hour and 12 minutes into the show. I'm not sure. No matter how rapidly we go, we can make this a 1 hour.
No, if we just do it faster,
Well, you go so fast, it's like Superman flying backwards and turning the Earth backwards, and time goes back.
Kevin, this from Jordan Kapler. How many wins can OSU get this season if they only played freshmen and sophomores? And I like the fact that we're giving a Jordan Kapler question to Kevin.
Yeah, so no matter what I say, I'm going to be wrong because Jordan decided he doesn't like me this year. This is a more challenging schedule than most years just based on the fact that Ohio State is on the road more. It's the 9 league games, 5 on the road, 4 at home. You have a out-of-conference game on the road as well. So you only have, you have a pretty gross split of games. It's 6 and 6, but, they're very talented with their freshmen and sophomores. I mean, you could sit there and put Devin Brown at quarterback. You could have Dallin Hayden at running back. I think the place that I'd be concerned is what the line is going to look like. What is the offensive line going to look like at that situation? Devin Brown better be mobile because he's going to have to run for it. I think you look at Ohio State's schedule, and I don't have it in front of me. I'm going to say
I'll go through it. I'll go through it for you.
All right.
At Indiana.
You should win that one.
Versus Youngstown State.
Yes. Win.
2-0. Western Kentucky at home.
Win.
3-0. At Notre Dame.
I don't
You're
think they.
pausing too
I
long.
mean, I don't think they can with just freshmen and sophomores.
Correct. 3-1. Maryland at home.
Maryland is different on the road than Maryland is playing them in College Park. Talia Tungavaloa is going to be able to go out there and do some things, but I don't think the Maryland defense would be able to shut down Ohio State enough. So I'll give Ohio State the win there.
All right, so that's 5-1. No, 4-1.
4-1.
At Purdue.
It's a new head coach there. They're turning it over. New quarterback with Hudson Card coming in from Texas to take things over. I think on the surface, I just say going to West Lafayette has been just such a nightmare for them. But this is a brand new Purdue team that's going to have to figure a lot of stuff out. I'll give Ohio State the win.
Ohio State and West Lafayette. What could possibly go wrong? You heard it here first.
I know.
Versus Penn State at home.
I think they dropped that one.
At Wisconsin.
I think they dropped that one.
So now you're at 5-3. At Rutgers.
They win that one.
6-3. Home for Michigan State.
Michigan State's still a mess. They win that one.
Okay, 7-3. Versus Minnesota.
They win that one.
8-3. Whew, man, you're giving them a lot of credit. And then at Michigan.
On to the next question. I don't really want to go on the record about that one, but no.
So Kevin's got him at 8-4. I think that's a little optimistic because boy, I have questions about that offensive line. I think that's going to be a big problem with the offensive line.
Daniel Henry in there. We're talking about with freshmen and sophomores only. We're not predicting the season. This is not.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Ohio State insider picks 8-4 season. No.
Are you questioning people calling you an insider, or are you questioning what are you questioning there?
I would also say that the defensive line is also a concern in terms of just freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing. Who are your running backs? Because you got a whole bunch of running backs who are not, are you counting first and second year players, or does Evan Pryor count? Because if Evan Pryor counts, then okay, you've got Evan Pryor and you've got.
I'm taking redshirt sophomores. I think that's fine.
Okay,
that's a third year guy. I don't.
Yeah.
No,
well,
played freshmen and sophomores. This isn't first year and second year. This is.
Yeah.
Right. This show does stick to the semantics of the questions posed.
Yeah, I think 8-4 is a little optimistic. I'd be more in the 6-6, 7-5 kind of range. But still to have that, I don't think there are that many colleges, universities in the country that could say that about their conference schedule, especially in a year when you're playing a good team out of conference and all of that.
This from Christopher Simones. I'm not an OSU fan, but OSU showed tremendous character in the Peach Bowl. They will come back very motivated. Ryan Day was asked, is this going to motivate you guys like the Clemson loss did? And he's like, we'll see. It's too early to say. So we'll see if that happens. They got really close, and I wonder if the motivation is more based on seeing what happened to TCU in the championship game and knowing that not only were you very close to beating Georgia, but you were very, very close to getting to play a team that shouldn't have been in the playoffs. Final one from Mark Williams. What are the early thoughts on who will step up at wide receiver with Julian Fleming and Emeka Egbuka being out for the spring game? Not just the spring game, but all spring. I think this is the spring of Jaden Ballard. I think you can expect to hear his name. I assume he'll be the number one at Z with Julian Fleming out. He's going to get a lot of run. I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing Keon Gray's name as well there. Then, of course, I will go back to my constant hype training of Caleb Brown in the slot, but also Xavier Johnson in the slot there. So I think those are the four. And this is also a huge opportunity for Noah Rogers, Bryson Rogers, and Carnell Tate to get some run in there wherever. So I think this is one of those beneficial things for everybody else. I think having these two guys out for the spring, and also Marvin Harrison, he's healthy. You might as well just mark him out for the spring as well, because there's no point in having him do more than the bare minimum.
No, you just keep him safe and secure and properly wrapped in bubble wrap on the sideline, and he will get plenty of work. I'm sure he will. His work ethic has never been really in question, so I'm sure he'll be out there with the jugs machine catching. It'll be interesting to know whether a couple of years ago when it was like Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin and Johnny Dixon, they were trying to catch 10,000 balls during the offseason. I would genuinely wonder if Marvin Harrison knows his number, and if the number is higher than 10,000, I would suspect that it might be. But yeah, no, this is an opportunity. You kind of know what you have by and large with your kind of top three guys. This is an opportunity to find out what else you got, because I don't know how much Xavier Johnson is going to be playing in the spring. I mean, he's someone who's been around long enough that you may kind of limit his reps, and you're really seeing the young guys, and you sort of separate the wheat from the chaff there in terms of some of the younger guys and who's ready to go this fall and who isn't. Finally, I do want to hit on a tremendous comment from Troy V here. That bit got cut. We'll cut that bit, and we'll show Kevin saying the Buckeyes will go 8-4 this year. Yeah, I mean, Kevin, YouTube Shorts, who says no?
Oh, that's right. That's a good point,
Once again, for those of you listening to us on the audio podcast, I have just flipped Tom Orr off for the second time.
All right. I think we have said enough, or at least Kevin has. Anything else from you guys before we go? I want to thank everybody for joining us. Any other parting shots?
No,
Kevin,
I think
nothing.
we're good. I think,
Okay.
sorry we didn't give you a lot of advance notice out there that we were going to do this show. We knew we were going to do one, and I got a text from Tony. He's like, how does 11 grab you? I'm like, okay. So and that was at about, what, 10:20?
Well, I mean, sometimes these things are better spur of the moment. You don't want to be too prepared for stuff. Tom, anything else before we go?
No, just wanted to let everyone know that we really appreciate you guys being here, but especially Jordan Kapler. Your comments mean a lot to us. Thank you.
I would echo those same sentiments, but I do not want to be part of an echo chamber. However, I will not disagree with them. I want to thank you all for joining us. As always, you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. There's a link up top. Subscribe today. Say hello to us there on the message board. Read all the great insider content, premium content there that we have for you. Click the thumbs up on this video as you're watching it. Go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great weekend.